Action. All right. Lily Donald. Thank you so much for finally appearing on Mr.
It
Clark
took
After
you
Dark.
a very long time. We made this agreement last summer.
It did. Yeah, we made the agreement last summer. And then in the midst of my getting lost through the trials and tribulations of New Brunswick, finally, after being metaphorically swept off my feet with a beautiful song in my DMs one day from the one and only, I was like, I got to get back to this episode with the legendary Lily Donald. So obviously, I think it goes without saying you're probably one of the kindest, nicest younger humans I've met along the road. And I've never actually taught you, but I mean, I've taught, I guess, near you in your school, and we kind of had the trip there together last year, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. But that actually might make it more interesting that we don't actually have that kind of classic student teacher relationship. It's actually like a bit more tertiary, if that's the right word for it. It's probably not. But I guess before we go anywhere into any of these questions, you're going into grade 12. How are you feeling? Like you literally just finished grade 11. What are, I guess, like, what are your expectations of a grad year? Like, what are some things that you kind of, like, what are you envisioning, and like, what do you kind of hope you take away from a grade 12
I
year?
think my first thought actually after I was like near the end of finishing grade 11 was a memory came back to my mind when I was in like grade 5, and I remember talking with my friends, and I remember being like, "Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so excited for my grade 12 year. Like, oh my gosh, it's only like what, 7 years away. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited." Da, da, da. Like I remember very vividly talking about it, and then I kind of had that like deja vu flashback. So it feels weird to think that now that is what I'm doing. But I think the biggest thing that I want to do and learn is just do everything, period. Like, I'm going to, like, I was talking with our lovely music teacher and drama teacher, like, I'm gonna join choir, like, I might even try out for a sport. I'm gonna do the productions. I'm gonna do student council. Like, I'm just gonna throw myself into everything because like this is the last time you're gonna be able to do those things. I don't want to. I'm not scared. I don't want to.
I'm not.
I don't want to shy away. So I think that my biggest takeaway that I hope to take from grade 12 is that I did everything in the last year. Like I'm
Yeah, I
not
love that.
instrumentally like good at all. Like I can sing, but like the only instrument I can play.
Instrumentally
Yes,
challenged,
the
as they
only
say.
instrument that I
Wow,
can
I sounded a lot worse when I said
the
it.
only instrument I can play is the ukulele.
Mr. Clark After Dark is brought to you by Luxy. That's Luxy. Luxy is the standard for modern dating, as it gives you a greater understanding of a potential match's intentions and background before you make your move. Swiping endlessly on other dating apps can be exhausting and often leaves you with only the leftovers in your dating pool. Luxy is an exclusive platform with just a 10 to 15% acceptance rate, as well as a profile and income verification feature, so you can be confident you're only connecting with those who meet your high standards. Their community guidelines emphasize safety, trust, and quality by strictly prohibiting scams, explicit content, and harassment. 2025 is your year to stop settling. With Luxy, there is no luck involved, just real connections with people who truly match what it is you are looking for. Download the Luxy app today to see if you qualify for a better chance of finding the right person for you. And now, back to the show.
And it's very moderately, so I think that if I join
But
band, it'll be brutal. But I don't know.
honestly, we had the high school came to my new middle school that I'm at now, and they did I think they're like doing their tour right now, and there was no ukulele solo. And I was like, you know what? This could use, like, all of a sudden just the curtain comes back from the side, and all of a sudden, like, they're just you with the ukulele kind of going to town. I feel like that could be a pretty good. I'm trying to think of a remix with Donald in it, but there's something there, I think. But no, I like that, because I think even for myself, because I've been thinking about this a little bit lately, because I think, for better or worse, I think once you get to grade 12 or end of high school, you start to reflect. Like, you actually start to remember things that happened in your life, like you said about grade 5. And to me, that kind of started in grade 12 and then never stopped. Like, my friends used to always make fun of me that I used to love going by my old house in Dickensfield. So Fort Mac, if anyone knows. I used to just like biking by it Like I wasn't trying to like creep in the neighbors or anything. And like I only lived in Wood Buffalo. Like I literally lived 2 minutes away. But I was like, oh yeah, like I grew up there. That's so cheesy to me. And the reason where I'm kind of going with this is I've now been out of high school for 10 years. Like it's been 10 years since my graduation this year. And I'm like, I have nothing to add on that, but I definitely do remember in grade 12, I was like, I was scared. I was too scared. Now I'm not scared, but I was too scared to like try doing different things. Like I was too scared to. I mean, I did track and field, and I came in last place in the 3,000 meters. Should not have done track and field, but like to go into anything music or drama, because I know Carnegie had a pretty sweet drama program at Westwood back in the day, and they did some cool shows. Like basketball and volleyball weren't cool. Like I played football, but I was brutal at it. Like I don't know. I appreciate your willingness to be like, you know what, I'm only going to do this once, and like you're only going to miss out if you don't try these
100%,
things.
100%. I get a lot of deja vu and like thinking back, like in like what happened, like thinking back on that like memory when I was in grade 5, because for the last 3 years I've been choreographing, and for the first year co-directing a production at the elementary school that I grew up in. So I have been
All the
yeah, so
nostalgia, I
I
like that.
did Madagascar and Aladdin. I was a choreographer for elementary school productions. And
Sounds
this
awesome.
year, through the strike, so I didn't have my mother who usually helps me, I choreographed and co-directed Finding Nemo, the musical, for a group of wonderful
I didn't know that. I don't remember there being music, but I love
they've
that.
made a musical version of it. So it was pretty awesome. And
Nice.
I think that the craziest thing is like school. So I've been doing that since I was in grade 9. So grade 9, 10, and 11. I have been spending my after school times. I would leave my school and I would go into my elementary school, like teaching kids who I was there and walking around the building. Like I was just there a week ago with the kids, and like walking in, like the walls feel small, the roof feels short, like yeah, but it's so like even walking into classrooms that I was in when I was like, like 7 years old was so nostalgic. And then to think back and be like, you know what, this is the room that I said can't wait till I'm in grade 12, and like here I am.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I used to like biking through my old
Yep.
playground and stuff. I don't know. I'm just a weird guy. Maybe I just bike too much. Maybe that's my. But so are you? I feel like I should know this. Part of me thinks that you've told me you wanted to be a teacher one day, but I actually have no
So
idea. What is it that you wanted to
I am
be?
a very blessed human that I do know what I want to do with my life. A lot of people don't at my age, so I'm very blessed to have a very clear understanding that I want to be a teacher. So that is the profession.
Okay.
Come September, I will be applying for universities and colleges to
Okay.
become a elementary school teacher.
Scarifying. All right. So you will be a person of the cloth one day. I think person or man of the cloth refers to like the Catholic Church, but I've just started to use it for, I've started to use it for like everything lately. People always give me weird looks, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stick with this till it's funny one day when it gets there. And yeah, because I think when I went into education for teaching, like obviously I wasn't going in for machining, but I didn't really know what to expect, but I remember being like so friggin' nervous to actually start teaching and kind of do that thing. But I think obviously it goes without saying that you'll kind of knock it out of the park, kind of already doing these drama things and like doing this directing and being in that role and developing your teacher voice that even I have trouble kind of sticking to even to this day. And so I guess I'm going to ask you a big question here, but it's actually a short question. Why? Why education? Why teaching? I mean, like, there's obviously like your mom is an EA involved in the system. You just saw her go through a strike, but you're like, nah, I'm not scared. I'm just gonna keep. I want to go through this. It's like, why that? Why?
So
Why do you think?
yesterday I actually had this question asked to me. And it was so hilarious to watch this reaction. So I was waiting in the office for my reader because I have dyslexia. So I was waiting for my reader for my exam yesterday, and I was in a room, and there were two teachers. They were manning the desk, setting everybody up for where they need to be, helping out. And they said to me, "So you're going into grade 12? Do you know what you want to do with your life?" And I said, "I want to be a teacher." And there were two very distinct reactions. One of them was like, "Really?" And the other one was like,
Yeah.
why? I couldn't
Well,
help but laugh because the two reactions were so different. And I was like, why, your teacher. And she was like, yeah, I think you're crazy. And I was like, wow,
yeah.
I actually, I actually have gained a fear of telling people that I want to be a teacher. I actually, that, the one person that reacted with a smile, that was probably, I think, one of three people that ever actually smiled and said you would be great at that job. Every time I tell people I want to be, it's like, why? Be a nurse, be a doctor. You're too smart to.
Being a nurse sounds
my
awful.
my I love my dad, but my dad has, his mother was a teacher, his grandmother, worked as a librarian. I come from generations of teachers. Even my mother's mother worked in a school. I have generations of teachers in me, and my father knows how much they're disrespected and, not treated the way they always need to be and underpaid. So my father desperately does not want me to be a teacher. Of course, he will support me in whatever I do, and I love my father. But my father
Mhm.
adamantly is like, be a nurse, and that's usually the reaction I get. And I've sort of gained like sort of this mentality of I'm just not going to tell people what I want to do because unfortunately I get some pretty horrid reactions and a lot of judgment actually. But my biggest answer to why is the children, and I think you'll hear that from most teachers, is because
Yeah.
I don't think any person would be like, oh, the pay's great. Like, I don't think, like, no, I've never heard a teacher.
I like see this mic is just sitting on piles of money right now. Like this is where it's the stand.
I've
So
never
yeah.
heard a teacher be like, oh yeah, I want to do it because the pay is great. No, what you usually will hear is, I love to teach children. I love to inspire and
Yeah.
help grow people because the people in my life that are most influential, besides my family, are teachers in my life. And mentors, people I see as mentors. Like you are somebody I see as a mentor, and there's
Stop. Oh
there's a
my
lot of
goodness. I'm watching.
there's a lot of people that I feel that way about, and they are like 90% teachers.
Yeah, and it's go ahead. Yeah.
And I just,
I was gonna say the
sorry,
I'm cutting you
yeah, yeah,
off. You
I
go.
just think
No,
that
you're good.
it's the children. Like, that's why.
Yeah. No, I remember it was kind of hilarious. Like someone who was like a fairly popular educator online, someone said, "Oh, like should I be a teacher?" And she just responded. She said, "Like, well, like, do you enjoy explaining things to people? Like, fundamentally, do you enjoy like actually the process of relaying information and trying to make it make sense?" And honestly, I really tried to, and this is going to sound what's this going to sound like? It's probably going to sound bad, but again, you don't go into it for you're not going to make $1 million a year, but especially in Canada. I think Alberta has issues that exist beyond just the pay. Like, for example, you might hear a lot of things in Alberta about classroom composition and complexity, which is fundamentally like, okay, the 35 students I had 10 years ago are not the same 35 I have now due to kind of different needs. And being able to actually, it doesn't come from a place of wanting to teach less people. It's like, I want to actually be effective in teaching the people that I do have in my room. And the other part is, so like New Brunswick has class size caps. Like we are capped at 31 in high school, which I don't think I ever had a class smaller than that except for one that just had 14, which is kind of weird. And then we also have we have days that are work days to do report cards throughout our year. So it's not just like the PLF day where it's like wink, wink, you can go do your report cards, but you have to do these three things. It's like, no, these are dedicated days to doing your report card. I know even next year, I promise I'm not just trying to recruit you, but next year there's actually 37 schools that are piloting a 4-day instructional week, which means they're only going to school Monday to Thursday, and then Fridays are non-instructional days all
Yeah.
year. Again, none of those things are, and again, to me, I'm not trying to poop on Alberta. I mean, maybe a little
I
bit.
mean, it's not great.
But like,
It's not.
no, but I guess what I'm saying is the teacher that's going to roll their eyes is, relatively speaking, especially compared to the US and as far as I know, most of Europe, like pay and conditions are actually better mostly across Canada. And the things Alberta is fighting for, because he's usually, okay, if you don't want those conditions, then at least pay me
Yeah.
more. So it's like I'm kind of going through the thick of it for whatever. I mean, I get that too. But it's the one stat that stuck out to me, and it's kind of literally you experience this firsthand. It's like 50% of teachers leave in the first 5 years. And that's your split. You're going to get like the WTF, what are you doing? Wow, you do this to yourself. And the, oh, that's great. Like, you love this, blah, blah, blah. And I've even noticed this year for myself, I'm actually ashamed to say it because there might be some of my grade 8 students that listen to this once they hear that I have a former student on and be like, oh, Mr. Clark, I want to be your podcast. At teaching middle school, I'm like weirdly grieving them. Like, I don't know if it's because they're still like smaller. Like, I feel like my high school grade 12 kids, I was like, all right, you guys are done. Get out of here. Go on with your lives. But like the grade 8s, like I feel this, like a few of them yesterday were like giving me hugs while they were leaving. And I'm just like, I'm actually going to cry. Like, what is happening right now? Like, why is this so sad? But I think it's because they're still like, maybe like not impressionable, but they're still just so little. And like they still have high school ahead of them. And like, I don't know. You definitely start to, I think the longer you stay in it, the more you start to appreciate the relationships that you've had with the students, more so than, I think even my first year. Like the first year, you're trying to figure out like, how do I not look like an idiot talking in front of people? That's like the goal for the first 3 years. I'm still trying to get there. But you start to care less about like what the kids, I guess, like maybe the fear of looking stupid in front of the kids, because that's now all I do is try to look stupid in front of the kids. But yeah, do you have any thought? Like, I guess that's kind of just me piggybacking on your, I guess, ambition for going into teaching. But I guess like, what are your thoughts there? Anything kind of spring up for you?
I had a decision to make. Going to like when you take education, you can take a elementary generalistics degree or you could take a post-secondary degree, right?
Yep.
And whether you're teaching, that means you're teaching 6 and down, 6 and up, right? So, and that's sort of the split in the way. I don't know how it worked when you were in school, but for me, that's
Same.
sort of how it is for me, and especially for Alberta education, that's how it works. So the decision to do elementary wasn't really a hard decision for me. And some people, they're sort of like, oh, I like both, or sometimes it's more obvious.
Yeah.
For me, it was very blatantly obvious what I wanted to teach because of that very reason that you explained. For me, I spent one day in a grade 1 class when I was in grade 9, and it was like a work experience day where you got to go to work with your parent. My mother works in a school. So I got to go and work in a school for a day, and I spent a couple hours in a grade 3 class, a couple hours in a grade 1 class, and I kind of moved around, and I spent a couple hours in a grade 1 class. And although it was very overwhelming, like the hugs that you get and all of the, I would have little girls come up to me and be like, you're so pretty, or I want to be like you when I grow up, and they would hug you and they would
like, I'm getting gassed up here. Like, I'm
and
coming
I know
back.
that's not all what teaching is about, and it's not, but
no, but it's the fun
it's the
connection part.
that you have with your students. Like, honestly, and it's so beautiful. And even like witnessing those students and the connection they have with the teacher in the room, and the way they would, be like, Miss, I love you, and they would hug her. And like, it was just like the way you could see their relationship was so beautiful. And I love that. And just seeing that, I was like, you know what? Like these experiences, when you experience it, I think that's what makes me want to be a teacher, is that I got to like experience what it was like. And I know it's not like that every day. And I know that, you're going to have days that are horrible. And unfortunately, that's a lot of the reality. But at the same time, the relationship that you have with those students, for me, makes up for that. But I definitely... Alberta education, like moving to what you said about that, is definitely, our system is not great. What's so funny is that we actually have the highest expectations for education. So something that I was told was actually, if I were to go to college or university in a different province, my grade will be worth 5% more somewhere else, because our education is actually considered more complex. So if I were to go to university in BC and my average was, a 80 overall, it would be considered an 85 average in a different province because of how high the education is. But If you take that information, high education, high expectation, that's awesome. But then you look at the pay and the average, like the way that teachers are being paid in every province. And if you look at it, which province do you think has like the one of the worst pays? Alberta. So it's very interesting how, the education is a lot more a higher expectation, which is amazing. It's great for students and it's great overall, and I agree with it. But then what's funny is that you think that that means that those teachers are paid more. They're actually on the lower end of all of the pay grade in all of Canada, and being paid in oftentimes worse than states in America and our neighboring country, and it's not great. So I think that's what I wanted to touch on. What you said about Alberta education was that it's very interesting the way that it works, but it's definitely, I do agree that Alberta education is a very interesting topic because of the way that it runs.
Absolutely. You are speaking my language right now. And I think the scariest part is not like what comes next. I think it becomes like, obviously depending on, like I know you've had a boyfriend for a while, and like I don't know like what you guys maybe have planned for the future, and obviously I hope that all works out. But depending what he ends up doing, like it's a very real possibility that if you're kind of not in like the trades orientation in Alberta, like they're really scared of the brain drain and people like who are kind of in these types of professions actually leaving again. Not that my brain is worth a whole lot, but like my wife and I both taught there's opportunities elsewhere. We went elsewhere, found, I guess, employment, and kind of moved on with our lives. But it is interesting to see like even New Brunswick, for example, and I think Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and BC and Ontario had at least a 15% raise to kind of adjust post-COVID in the past 4 years, whereas Alberta, I think, had 3.75% when I was there. So, and again, Fort Mac's a different animal too, because you have the living allowance up there, but like you can make more in St. John, New Brunswick than you can in Edmonton, Alberta now, which is insane because you can get housing for like 30 to 40% less in St. John. So I think it's definitely work is cut out for Alberta. And again, like, this is going to sound so cheesy, but I love cheese, and who doesn't? Like people like you are the ones that are not afraid to, like, to me, it's not what it looks like in 4 years when you're done. It's like what's happening 15 years from now. Because honestly, so I'm going to tell you a scary statistic about New Brunswick. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you ready? So I think Alberta's got like 48,000 teachers in it, something like that. It's like the total all over Alberta. New Brunswick has 6,000 teachers. Okay, much smaller province. And in the next 3 years, there's up to 1,500 teachers are eligible for retirement. So that's almost 25% of our workforce in New Brunswick is eligible for retirement. By 2035, which is only 10 years from now, it's over half is eligible for retirement. So I don't know, but I guess all I'm saying is you, even right now, like I'm still young in my career, and obviously you'll be starting yours in a few years. Like people who are in those leadership positions are going to move on.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you're going to be taking someone who's 55 job tomorrow, but it's like people have to figure out who's going to take on those roles. And I see someone like yourself, maybe the Mr. Clark After Dark featuring Miss Donald is going to be the future in 2037. We're trying to figure out the retention crisis in Canada. But I mean, we can only dream. Maybe we'll be hosting events one day, Lily. Who knows? And you'll bring your ukulele out. And I guess that kind of touches on interesting, because I kind of forgot that you actually wanted to go into teaching, and we've gone down some pretty rich conversation there so far. There's two things. Obviously, some people have a shit experience in high school. I, for one, had mostly good educators. There's a few that I despise and still despise to this day, and I'm open about that too. I would never criticize them professionally, but some people suck. And some people that suck become teachers. That's fine. That's going to happen. Like, I don't know. It's just the truth.
I actually have an interesting thought on that when it comes to crappy teachers.
Please lay it on me.
Something
Okay.
that was,
Let's define.
Yeah. So the worst teacher I ever met was named Lucas Clark.
Yeah, that guy sucks. Like I think he taught social. He's a loser next to her. Karl Marx hate that guy.
No.
Yeah.
One thing that kind of stuck with me is, so I go to a new school now, not the same school I was when I was in the same school as you. And I met this wonderful teacher that I met so much. And I said something interesting to him. I was like, man, there was this teacher at my last school. Man, like I couldn't get along with this person. Like they were this and this. I started to kind of complain because I was having issues with this teacher. And something that they said to me kind of stuck with me, and they said, there's no such thing as a bad teacher. There's two things wrong with teachers if a student believes that a teacher is not good. Number one is communication and the relationship. And number two is that the teaching style does not work with the student, and that teacher may not be open to changing that. So that opinion really stuck with me, and I think that I will carry that opinion with me because I truly believe that it's so true. Because when I look back at teachers, I think, man, like, this teacher did not work well with me. Okay, well, first of all, our communication wasn't great. Our relationship, we didn't have that, person to person communication. It was more of hierarchy to peasant communication, which kind of ended up being, do you know what I mean? Like,
I absolutely
sometimes
know what you mean.
teachers can be a little bit like, power filled, and it turns into something very negative. And then the second issue was that, the way that I think didn't work with the way that they taught, and they were not willing to work with me on how we can make this work. And that's where things go wrong. So I very firmly agree with this teacher who mentioned that to me, and I think that is so true. Because just found it interesting that you said, there's a lot of bad teachers out there. I would say that there's no such thing as one.
And honestly, I think because the teacher that I had, maybe I can't give too much away, but like excellent in content, but just, again, even reflecting and trying to give grace because I wasn't a good student either. Like, my dad was sick. I was kind of going through all that. I was showing up late, wasn't doing my work. I was probably looking like your typical asshat that you would see like smoking weed in the bathroom now. I mean, that still happens. I didn't do that. But I just remember, like, this teacher does not care about me whatsoever, and they're going out of their way to single me out. And that wasn't just me, that's like mirrored by people that were around me at that time. And so that's kind of where I go when I say crappy teacher. Even if I were to say that, 100%. It's like and again, it wasn't even just like, oh no, they're having a bad day. It's like, no, this is like, and it's funny too, once you go into the teacher world, especially where you're from, and like a name will be brought up and they're like, you know what? Like, F that person. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I'm not crazy. Like, usually for the most part, your hunch is there. But even for myself, obviously, I like to proudly say I'm like a pretty chill guy. Like, I can kind of get along with most people, but like, there's still students that I connect with more than others. And I would never, like, some students like to say to themselves, they don't really want a relationship with their teacher, no matter kind of how much you try and like check in, like they're kind of content doing their own thing. I'd say in a class, and that might be worse in a class of 35, but usually in a class of 35, 20 of them you have solid connections with. 10, like, oh yeah, like, them, you say hi in the hall and it's whatever. And then 5, it's like, I think I put your grade in, but I still kind of don't really know who you are. But no, it's like, you know who they are, but you kind of, like, you'll say hi to them, but there's not a whole lot of that reciprocation, or if that's a word, I think it is reciprocal. But I'm kind of wondering for you, like, obviously you were someone that I remember talking about wanting to change schools, and you were talking about now obviously being a teacher. And I think a lot of teachers kind of have this grand vision of trying to make it different. Because I guess that story kind of inspired the way that I want to teach because of the treatment that I received. But like, what is it that you think teachers might be missing about people your age in terms of like how to build relationships with them, or like what is the expectation of a teacher relationship from a student that's in a class of 35? Like, I guess, like, what are your thoughts?
I think you said it yourself when you said that, you felt like this teacher did not care about you. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is that, I'm a very fortunate person where I come from a very healthy home. I have 2 parents that love each other, and I come from I'm very blessed in, what I have in my life.
All right, so we lost connection there. No big deal. So I guess we were talking a bit about my teacher not caring before Riverside was like, no, we got to shut down this conspiratorial thinking here on Riverside here today. Hopefully that's not the case. Sorry, Riverside, in advance. But I guess we're talking about like, what is school missing? Obviously, I know in some ways it's kind of like a cheesy cliche. Like, you'll probably have assignments that you hate in education where it's like, what's your teacher mission? Like, what do you kind of want to accomplish? Like, what is like challenge the norm, but like teach like we've always done, or else you don't get a contract. That's kind of the contradictions that you'll end up facing as you kind of find your own. I hate the word journey. It actually makes me want to curl up into a ball and die. But when you kind of like and start doing your own path, it also sucks. But I guess what are your thoughts there for, I guess, caring for the kids, developing relationships, and trying to not fix, but maybe steer the boat in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what I was saying before about like, students don't always have like a very positive home life.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, usually, we find like, kids are coming to school for what they're missing at home as well
Mm-hmm.
as an education. Like it's a little bit sometimes bigger than just I'm here to learn and get over with and go home. Sometimes I find that it's like, this is almost an escape for me. And I think that it's caring about your students and not just caring, okay, I care that you're having a good grade and I care that you're passing, but also just caring like that you're okay. Like
Mm-hmm.
the greatest relationships that I've ever had with a teacher is teachers that make me feel like they truly care that I'm okay, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that I am, I'm doing all right and that my well-being is okay. And, sometimes teachers can be a little bit black and white and can be a little bit like, this is the job we're here for. This is what I'm going to do. End of story. This is my train. If you don't hop on it, my train's going.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's like, well, you know, teachers can be in a way, it's more than just, that black and white. It's also like you need to care about your students or else your students, without that relationship with you, that's when it turns into it's a detriment to their own education.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, I like to talk a lot and I like to ask a lot of questions, especially I like to engage because that's how I learn. And, I usually end up raising my hand a lot, asking questions, being very engaged in the conversation. And I had one teacher who I was trying to engage with and I was trying to ask questions. And I felt like a burden to them. Like they just like, Lily, stop talking. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like, stop asking me questions. Like I'm trying to get through a lesson. And I never had a teacher do that to me because usually it was like, yes, please ask questions. Let's be engaged. But it wasn't like that. She oftentimes would stop me and then she would sort of be like, hey, like let's just get through this lesson. And when I would try to ask her questions and be engaged, because that's how I learn, I felt very shut down by her. And then it was hard. It actually turned out to be a detriment to my grade because then I stopped asking questions. I stopped asking when I didn't understand something because I felt all of a sudden like, oh, I can't ask her any questions, right?
Mm-hmm. It's like
So
the connection
I
between the relationship and the grade. Yeah. I never actually thought about
exactly.
that much. So yeah.
I really think that there's a bridge there. Like it's not just a black and white thing where it's like, I'm going to sit here and teach you and then you're going to get a good grade and then we're going to move on. Like, a relationship with a teacher, especially for me, changes the way my grade is. Like if there's a teacher that I really dislike and I can't get along with, my grade is not very good. But if there's a
Mm-hmm.
teacher that I feel loved and cared by and respected, I feel like my grade actually is like better in those classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that looking back at that makes me think, okay, this is how a teacher makes a difference in the way that somebody has a grade. And it's not just
Mm-hmm.
about, oh, this student does good or not. And, I'm teaching the same content everybody else was. It doesn't matter. It does matter. And I really think it does, but from teacher to teacher, where the way you care and the way you reflect to your students that it's be open, it's okay to ask questions, it's okay to be here. Like we're all human. When you create that relationship, it can reflect in the student's grade.
Hmm. I've actually never considered it that way. I wonder that could be a good, like, beginning and end of year research project. Like, how would you assess your relationship on a scale of 1 to 10 with a student at the beginning versus the end, and like look at how their grade potentially changed? Interesting. You just gave me an
Yeah.
idea for an assignment because I want to start my master's next year because I'm a nerd. But I think that's definitely something I would look into seeing what that would do. But
Yeah, and I actually, for me, I ended up switching teachers in the middle of a semester last year, and you can see the difference in my grades. So I had a teacher that I really struggled with. I couldn't get along with. I felt disrespected. I felt, almost belittled by this teacher. And even though I'm great at math, I'm really good at math. Like, I'm very good. And I had never struggled with math before, and I was coming into it. I came from, my last grade, having like a 90 overall in math. And then I went to this person's class and I had a 50. And I was struggling, and I sort of recognized that, this teacher is not just, it's not just about the black and white content. This teacher makes me feel belittled, and like I can't ask questions and I can't be engaged. And now my grade is suffering because of that. So I ended up switching classes, and I switched about 4 weeks into the beginning of that class into a different classroom with a teacher who's teaching the same exact one, working closely with the other teacher, same course, and I ended that with a 78. Coming into my first test with the new teacher, I got, I think, like an 85 or something on it. Versus my test that I did with the other teacher, I got like a 25, because I felt like, and they were the same tests because they shared the same test on the same day, but I did better with this teacher under the same unit. Why? Because this teacher was so loving and respectful, and encouraged me to be engaged with them and ask questions, and I felt so respected and loved in this classroom. Like, I could always ask for help and I could always be there, and I felt this sense of relief from my last teacher, and my grade went up 15 to 20, even it was 25% difference in my grade.
And I'm curious too, like, even for myself, I don't know a whole lot about if there even is a difference in how you would teach students that have dyslexia. So I guess, can you talk to me a little bit about what has worked for you as a student with dyslexia? 'Cause I don't like the word dyslexic student with dyslexia. I like that differentiation because it doesn't define who the student is. But even for what I've kind of been told is that it typically just requires more repetition and, I guess, like, patience and like, but I guess, how do you respond to that? Like, what's your experience like?
So that is a big part of it, especially, so, my father has dyslexia, and it runs in my family. My brother has severe dyslexia. He was diagnosed with severe dyslexia, ADHD, and anxiety. I was diagnosed with, dyslexia on, a minor level, but, compared to my brother, but, and anxiety. For me, I know my experience is completely different from my brother, even both having dyslexia. And for me, it's definitely, repetition is a big part. And that's also part of the reason why a human reader in tests is most helpful, because then I can say, hey, can you read to me that again, versus like a robot or an audio. Then all of a sudden it's like the audio's going and I can only press pause or play, and like I can pause to answer the question, but now I can't ask for that question again. And oftentimes I've had to ask people to repeat a question 3 to 5 times, and it's just how I comprehend. So you're 100% right, and repetition is a big part of that. But also, the way that I learn is completely different than the way that other people learn. And dyslexia does not mean that I am, like, I'm like slow or I have a low IQ. And it has nothing to do with that. And I think that's a big misconception. Like, oh, you're just a little slow. It's like, that has nothing to do with what dyslexia is. And so it's where my brain works for the 20% of the population, and 80% of the population is where everyone else's brain works. And the school district and the way that is taught by the curriculum is designed for 80% of the world. But my brain works with the 20%. My brain doesn't work that way. So sometimes a teacher will explain something and it doesn't make sense in my head. That makes no sense. But the person next to me is like, oh, that makes total sense. He made it so easy. But for me, I'm like, no, that makes no sense. Could you explain that to me in a different way? And the biggest difference is where the teachers who are willing to try to explain it differently and explain that makes sense versus the teachers who are like, no, this is the way that I teach. If you don't get it, that's your fault. You don't get it. You don't understand. And that's the biggest difference I've had with teachers. One of the best teachers I've ever had in my whole life. I wish I could. I don't know if I can say his name. I love him so dearly, and he
You can start out
deserves
the positive ones. That's fine.
for. Okay, this is Mr. Staples. Do you remember Mr. Staples from
Legend.
Macomb McTavish?
Of course.
He is. I would like to shout him out because he's one of the most amazing teachers I've ever had, and he did something very interesting for me. He was my math teacher, and I love math, but I usually do all my math problems differently than the way that the teacher showed it. So, Mr. Staples did an equation on the board. I remember this. I remember it so clear in my mind. He did an equation on the board, and I said, "Mr. Staples, why wouldn't you just do it this way?" And he was like, "Can you show?" Wait, he was like, "There's a different way to do this." I was like, "Yeah, this seems weird. I would do it differently." And he was like, "Come show me." So I remember standing up and I did the exact same equation, got the same answer, but I did it completely differently. And he said to me, "Your brain is so incredible." He was like, "You are one of the smartest people I've ever met. You just took the way that a textbook teaches something that I've been taught my whole life, the way that the textbook shows us to teach, and then you took that same question and did it differently, faster, made it easier, and got the same answer." And he told me that I was one of the smartest students he had ever had. And he said that the way that I did it was so incredible. And I've had teachers where I'll do the equation differently in math, and they'll say, "Oh, but that's not the right way to do it, so I marked you wrong." But I got the same answer. So, but Mr. Staples would always, he would be like, "You got the right answer. All of this makes sense. It's just not the way I would have done it. And wouldn't even think about to do it this way. It's incredible that you did it that way." So for me, the way I explain dyslexia is my brain works differently. You're working on a track that is completely different to mine, and my train doesn't fit the portions of your track. And if teachers don't understand that and they're not willing to try to work with it to make my train fit on their track, my train's going somewhere else, and I'm not going to be able to fit in the same route that they're going. You know what I'm saying?
I like that. Yeah. No, you
So,
need the.
I just think that it's so different. It's so different than people think it is.
Yeah, and the humility of the teacher, I find, like, honestly, life would be so boring if I was not even boring. Like it would be sad if I was right about everything. Like I should not be the one with all the answers. So I think for anyone to say, like, to correct me or to teach me something, like, I've never. Again, I hope that's, and I do think that's something that most teachers embody. This like weird, malleable, like educational experience that we all kind of have in that sense. But yeah, I've actually, when I used to sub at McTavish, I was tasked with assisting Mr. Staples in some math work, and he had, I think, like I don't know if it was his prep or like an intervention period for math, but he had like 4 students in that room. I don't know if maybe you were one of them, maybe back, and I don't know where you were in grades 7 and 8 back in those days.
I remember
anyway,
you were actually you were working in a different class. You were working in like a social shadow. You were shadowing Miss Cook when I remember meeting you.
Yes. But so odd times I was subbing at McTavish even before that, and so I had to go into his room once, and he was like just going from kid to kid, and there was no change in him. Like if even if he had to come back to you for the 4th time, it was like, okay, like let's work together to see what's not working with how we're presenting the information, or like not like, "Oh, I was just here 2 minutes ago." Like I think even subtle things were like the subtle like the big sigh, and like everyone's human, obviously, hopefully. You're gonna have those moments sometimes because it's mostly a frustration with yourself. You're like, "Oh, like why can't, like what can I do differently to actually help this student to actually understand this concept?" That's something I do remember and also admire about our dear friend Kevin, legend Kevin Staples. But last thing, future Miss Donald, is you and I obviously knew each other from school and like knew of each other kind of going into our experience with a travel organization. And I think you and I ended up visiting, I can't even remember, like 7 countries in the matter of 18 days, something along those
Seven,
lines. And
yeah, 7 countries, 16 cities, and
yeah,
um, two continents.
16 cities. I didn't realize how many cities. Okay, wow. Um, but yeah, so a lot of travel in a 3 week period. So I guess my first, not even question, um, what even initiated your interest in a trip like that? And like, I guess, what were you hoping to take away from it versus what you actually took away from it?
I think the biggest thing that I wanted was um a understanding of a world outside of my own world. Because when you're living in like, I don't know, I would call Fort McMurray a bit of like a small town in a way, like it's not the biggest thing in the world. Most people don't
It's
know
its
about it.
own
You know, the
thing.
thing that makes us, yeah, it's its own thing, and what kind of makes it different is like the oil sands. But I think that, I've met a lot of people who tend to surround themselves in this mentality of I'm the center of the universe. And I don't, I really, it's a huge pet peeve of mine when, people don't understand the world around them, and they tend to have this side of, I've only known this, so this is my world, and, I'm the star of this movie. And for me, what I wanted to expand myself on was that there is so much bigger than me. The world is surrounded by culture and history and this beautiful, beautiful things that I have nothing. Like for me, I am the slightest bit of importance to all of these things in the world. I am not the most important thing in the world. And I think that I need to understand that. And understanding, when you start to understand and give yourself a more worldly and global understanding, it changes you as a person, and you become a more well rounded person. You become more understanding of people's cultures and beliefs. And, I had somebody tell me this, and, I still laugh about it. I will not call them out, but I had somebody say this to me. I was sitting in a social class, and they said to me, why is our country even bilingual? Nobody speaks French in Canada. And to me, when I heard that, that was a prime example of what I didn't want to be. I did not want to be that person who was so, almost in a way, no disrespect to this person, but it was just a naiveness and like a lack of knowledge for, the whole other half of the country who is like mainly French speaking. And we live on the side of the country that, yes, there's not as much French, but there is still a lot of French in this country. And just because, your family doesn't speak French and you don't speak French doesn't mean that that is the only way that the world needs to be. So I think that traveling was so important to me, and is so important to me, because I feel as though I should be confident in the understanding that I am not the center of the universe, and to take away knowledge and culture and this great understanding of history, I think truly improves people just as a human. And, Mr. Clark,
Mhm.
standing in front of, a painting in the Louvre of Napoleon, and he's crying, is, what is
It
what
was pretty cool.
truly
It was pretty
it's
cool.
what told is what really showed me, like, this is what an understanding of the world sounds like. If you're looking at a picture of Napoleon and you are crying, this is somebody who is very globally aware
This guy's
of the
just invading on a
beautiful
horse, and I'm
history.
like, oh my goodness.
I
Yeah,
remember
it
you
was
were crying about the painting of him crowning himself.
yes,
That's
that
the one
was
you
cool. I
too.
just couldn't get over like how massive they were too. Like there's just so like we talk about like work life balance, but someone
Yeah.
spent like forever painting that painting and like did one thing and that was their thing, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what are I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
We
different.
don't
And I would
support
agree.
Napoleon,
I
but
like honestly my like takeaway from like those trips is like if I'm ever like stressed out about something or like I'm starting to like overthink some aspect of my life, I'm like, you know what? Someone is eating like cannolis in Assisi right now. Like it's not that serious. Like that's kind of like my like it's not actually like what are we actually stressed about right now? Like nothing is actually
yeah,
that horrible. But
yeah,
um
yeah.
so to
That's
wrap
the
up,
biggest thing. It's
yeah.
definitely like I would say like when somebody is like I see somebody online crying over like a Louis Vuitton bag because it's sold out, and like all I think about is like
Yeah.
there are people
Yeah.
eating in out of garbage cans, like your life is not
Yes.
over, you know and I think
Yeah.
that
I
that's a
also
huge
think
takeaway
of
from travel.
yeah. I know there's like I remember seeing a meme from Keeping Up with the Kardashians where Kim loses one of her earrings and they're like, Kim, people are dying. Like it's not that like I don't know why that meme. I've never watched the show, but that meme kind of stuck in my head. But um,
Yeah.
to wrap up here, Miss Donald. Obviously, I think you and I could talk all day, which I do miss your presence and having our conversations monthly at the Wood Buffalo Youth Travel meetings. But yeah, I think we had honestly an awesome trip. I think like the jogs in Florence and just kind of like eating snails in Beaune, France. Like I don't know, it's just things that I'll never forget myself.
Yeah.
But to wrap, the one thing I usually ask every guest, and obviously every guest is typically a teacher already, but I think obviously you are. I don't even know why I'm saying that because you are. You already are. You're already doing the things. You're already leading the dramas and such. But the quote is, "Education is what remains once one forgets everything that they learned in school." So. What is it that you want people to take away from their time with you specifically that they won't get anywhere else?
Oh, this seems very, egotistical. What did they learn from
No,
Amazing Me?
it's
Uh,
no, it's like what is the I guess maybe the embodiment of life that you try to portray that perhaps they
yeah,
should you would hope that they would take from obviously you would have learned this from others and potentially hopefully pass on to them.
yeah. I think that the the more we understand each other, the more we have a world in which it's bigger than ourselves. And I think that that's the biggest thing that
Mm-hmm.
I want people to take away is that we need to understand each other, and we need to realize that we're all human, and we all have bad days, we all have hard times, and things are not always right for us, but the world is bigger than just us, and it doesn't make you any less important, but it doesn't make anyone else less important than you. Yeah.
Beautiful. Could not have said it better myself. Miss Donald, thank you so much for coming on Mr. Clark After Dark. I don't think this will be our last episode. I think maybe a yearly education Miss Donald episode I think could be a cool one. So anyway, thank you so
Yeah,
much for coming on today and gracing me with your presence.
of course. Thank you for gracing me with yours.